Hey everyone, now I have my guide and bed in alignment on this Ross gouging machine. Next step is to put in my blade. Got a nice new sharp blade from Phil Ross today. Thanks, Phil. And a couple things to go over first. These are the two main tools you will need. A couple of different drivers. And in case your machine didn't come with them, or you don't have them, or you lost them, this is what you want to Google and get a pair of these. Okay? Before I do anything, before I get this blade near the gouging machine, I want to take a safety measure to ensure that I don't ruin this nice blade. And that is thickening the cane thickness, essentially. If you imagine thinning the cane lets the carriage go down farther. And if I have the blade, say, a little too far protruding out of the guide area here, it could hit this cane stop. And thickening what would be the cane measurement prevents that. We can always thin it back later to get our nice 58, 59, 60, whatever we like. Okay, so I've got my blade set screw along with a couple washers in this slot. And I'm just going to drop it in carefully. Try not to hit the edge of the blade against the brass. And I'll try to get pull that back out because the screw came out. Okay. Just kind of get that in there. And I'm putting my finger down here so that the blade doesn't fall against this. Just trying to take care of that edge. And I'm going to get the blade set screw just lightly set into there. Okay? So now the blade isn't going to fall out. Obviously it can move around, but it can't fall out. So a few things to go over first. I've been calling this the blade set screw. It's kind of what it does. It sets the blade in place. The screws here, and the screws opposite on the underside, or on the right side, sorry. Those are your side adjustment screws. And this screw, this little one on the top, is actually the depth adjustment screw. So obviously this is way too much blade showing. What I want to do is if I tighten this, notice what happens. It's very slowly, maybe I should loosen this a little bit first. Very slowly pulling the blade back in. And that gets some people confused. Tightening this screw retracts the blade, okay? You can see now there's way too little blade showing. It won't even cut, okay? So we say, well, okay, what do I do to expose more blade? You actually undo this and then push. I'll show it again. Undo it and push. You see that? Undo, push. Now, this screw, and this goes for a lot of different machines I worked on. This screw, this knob here, a lot of different things. If my rule of thumb is, how much should I turn it to make an adjustment? Well, start by doing this. Make your adjustment, and if you think you might have tightened or loosened the screw, that's probably enough to start with. Again, if you think the screw might have moved, that's probably enough. A lot of people, I'll say, loosen this screw 1 minute, and boop, okay. No, that was an hour. Okay, that's a huge difference. So we want very, very small adjustments here, especially when we're fine tuning. So my first step when I am putting a blade in is I push the blade in there and I feel. Now that's very grabby, and you can see there's too much blade showing there. The blade should look very close to that front guide. So I tighten this screw. clockwise. Okay, now I feel that was maybe a little too much, so I back it off a little bit and push, and that feels about right. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a very good teaching method because, well, what should it feel like? I can just feel the blade catching my finger a tiny bit as I move it across here. That's something you can develop with practice, and when we test our cane, I'll kind of show you what it should look like. Okay, next thing, and this is all going to probably be done a few times to get it just right, just FYI. Next thing, put my driver in here, and I'm going to try to center the blade at the top up here in relation to the sides of the brass there. Notice if I move it back and forth, the blade jiggles and stops when it hits the brass. So I'm gonna just move it around with my finger, and I'm always pressing this way with my thumb. Okay, I'm pressing down and moving it side to side. So I'm gonna just try to get, and it's a little tough because if you can see, just moving the set screw jiggles the blade around a little bit. So I'm holding it very firm with my thumb here. And I'm gonna try to get it as centered as I can at the top and give it a nice turn. I'm not cranking it down, you know, no crazy tightness here, but I'm just tightening it a little bit. That actually doesn't quite look right. That looks a little better. Okay, so once I get it tight, seemingly even up here, then it's time to flip around and see if I have it centered down here. Now, it probably won't be centered down here. And I like to flip the bed around like this, so I'm looking down it from back guide to front guide. And what I'm gonna do is look at it's very hard to show this on camera. Look at the little crescent of shiny brass that's right around the blade. Now, if you can see that crescent, the blade is actually too far to the left, okay? So what we can do is use the right side little pusher screws, and this is the bottom one, which pushes the blade sort of down here. Oops, pushes at the blade sort of down in there. So I'm just gonna tighten that half an hour or so, and we will probably see that it made a difference. Yes, it did. Now, you'll have to forgive me, I probably won't actually be able to do this properly with the camera an inch above my hand, but I want to kind of show you what I'm doing. So, just as an example, watch the blade as I turn. I'm going to tighten this bottom adjustment screw. Did you see that it went that way? The blade went that way? So essentially what you're going to do is use these screws and the corresponding ones on the other side to center the blade. And we want the blade as perfectly centered and as perfectly parallel or perpendicular, whichever way you think about it, as possible. We want the blade in the center of this slot, straight down. That'll give us a pretty darn good result. Now I can already feel this is not exposed enough. So what do you do if, for example, I had the blade perfectly centered, I try to gouge cane and it either rips the cane, as in this is too exposed, or it doesn't cut at all, as in how it would be right now. The blade is not exposed enough. Well, unfortunately you have to redo everything. So undo this, undo your sides, undo the top. And now you can adjust this. Without undoing those things, this won't affect the depth adjustment. So now I can loosen this, and obviously I'm doing it too much to show you, and push, and that pushed the blade out some more. Okay? Again, this is really hard to show on camera, and it takes a lot of practice, not because it's complicated, as because it's just kind of fiddly, and it just takes practice to know how much to move things and sort of what to do. My only other recommendation is that you have a few pieces of garbage cane soaking just to test how it's cutting. To see, okay, this is ripping too much cane or it's not cutting at all. You don't want to waste great cane doing that. So just have a few pieces of garbage cane just to make sure it's cutting okay. And then, you can fine tune your center or side to side adjustments. What you're looking for is really nice, fairly complete curls of cane, but that are very, see-through essentially. Especially when they're wet, they'll be fairly see-through. Some people measure these with a micrometer, and I've done that. I don't know how accurate that is, if the cane's wet or et cetera, et cetera. But I think I'm pretty happy if I get a shaving that's about 0.05 of a millimeter thick, maybe 6, something like that. And the other thing is, and I'll make a video about actually using this too, but when I gouge all the way to the end until there's no more cutting, no more cane being cut, and then I turn the cane around and gouge again, and I should get just a wisp or two of cane coming from this side of the blade. That means you're probably set up pretty well and your blade is pretty well centered. If you have questions about this, please leave them in the comments. Again, this is really hard to show on camera. It's pretty much impossible to do on camera. I'm going to turn the camera off and actually do this so I can get my face closer to it and look. But I'm happy to help with any questions or requests for pictures or anything like that. Just let me know. And I hope this is helpful. Have a great day.